Smiles are weird and creepy. That's why I never do it. It's not the soul-crushing existential dread of everyday life that makes me this way. It's just common sense. In 2020, Parker Finn's short, Laura Hasn't Slept, won the Special Jury Award at South by Southwest, and it quickly became the basis for his first feature, Smile, released in 2022. The short and movie have a few key differences, but one thing remains. That smile. Laura Hasn't Slept focuses on a girl named Laura Weaver speaking to a therapist about a nightmare she's been having for a week, where a man keeps smiling at her. Every night he wears a different face, like a mask, but the eyes and smile are always the same, and he's always saying her name. Why does he keep appearing? He wants to show her his true face, but Laura knows once he does that, she'll die. How did Laura get here, by the way? Why is she even talking to this guy, a therapist she's never met before? She can't remember, because this is another nightmare. He smiles. He wants to show her something. As he starts ripping off his own face, Laura turns away, but she can hear his demonic voice calling out her name, telling her to turn around. "You're not real," she tells it. The sound stops. Is it gone? She turns. She looks around the room, and soon it's back. Big white eyes and a skinless face. Now, as though driven mad, Laura digs her nails into her own face and tears. So, some key differences. In the short, the thing seems relegated to nightmares and tends to take the face of strangers rather than people the main character knows, especially people with whom they have some associated trauma. But the thing that sticks with you is that smile. Finn must have realized how unsettling smiles are when held too long at inappropriate times and with eyes that don't match the emotion. So, he crafted a story exploiting that idea. The story itself is not all that unique. The beats and jump scares are all familiar if you've seen even a handful of horror movies before. But sometimes good horror means taking familiar elements and making them scary all over again with a new monster. In this case, smiling people. Though that's not where it ends. The basic structure and a scary idea is great and all, but then there's the execution, the writing, characters, performances. That is where Smile really sets itself apart. Finn brings clear writing and directing talent to this movie. Rose Cotter feels like a complete and complex character. Finn makes choices with the camera, using it to bring us further into her subjective experience. And the performances, Sosie Bacon as Rose especially, are strong. All of that makes Smile a frightening affair, even if the underlying story doesn't go in too many unexpected directions. Which directions does it go? Let's find out. Smile is part of the post-Babadook era, which means nothing can just be horror anymore. Now it's gotta be elevated. It has to have themes and trauma metaphors. So the movie appropriately begins with a traumatic memory. Rose Cotter's mother taking a nap. Except, wait, what's with all those pills and bottles on the ground? Oh. The camera swoops over to reveal a 10-year-old Rose in the doorway, staring at her mother's lifeless body. Finn wanted to start on this sequence, so the memory would be a dark cloud hanging over the rest of the movie. A ringing phone wakes Rose in the present, where we find her working as a therapist in a psychiatric ward in New Jersey. She sees patient Carl Rankin having another manic episode. He brightens the mood with some words of wisdom.
He's gonna die. She's gonna die. He's gonna die. I'm gonna die. Everyone dies.
I love how the empty space in this room, combined with the wide angle, makes it feel so isolated and unsettling. A feeling that will permeate the rest of the movie. Fun times ahead. Rose does a great job reassuring and calming her patient. The next patient will be a bigger challenge, an impossible one. The screaming girl is wheeled into the facility as we watch through an omniscient lens. Here's where we see some of Finn's unique camera work. It starts with a top-down view before swooping up and back into the ward. It gives a sense that the camera is alive, like it represents an evil presence and we're along for the demonic ride. Kind of like the camera on Evil Dead, though not quite as insane. In Dr. Morgan Desai's office, Rose stands up to her boss over a patient she referred without insurance. Cal Penn infuses the character with enough credibility and warmth that he isn't the one-dimensional villain you expect from a hospital boss too focused on money. One building block in making the world feel real and complicated, and a building block in making Rose a sympathetic character, someone we hope is going to be okay. Yeah, keep dreaming, pal. Or should I say, keep nightmaring? No, I shouldn't. That sounds stupid. So that other patient, Laura Weaver, 26, grad student, played by Caitlin Stasey, reprising her role from the short film. Last week, she witnessed something horrible. Her professor bludgeoned himself to death with a hammer. Since then, she's completely spiraled. She's been seeing something that looks like people, but isn't. Sometimes people she knows, like her grandfather who died in front of her when she was 7. Other times, it looks like a stranger. It wears different faces like a mask, but always with the same smile. The worst smile she's ever seen. She assures Dr. Cotter that she isn't crazy. She is not hallucinating. This is very real, but no one will believe her. And oh my God, it's here now. Rose cannot see anything, but Laura is utterly terrified until her demeanor changes entirely. Now, she smiles. Now, she cuts her own throat open, all while staring at Rose, still wearing that smile, and she'll wear it all the way to the morgue, thus inspiring Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars's hit single, Die With a Smile. That's not true. Camera swoops into Rose's eye and cue a good old-fashioned delayed title reveal. The title itself, the way it flashes, is already anxiety-inducing, but even more so given the movie's unique score, courtesy of composer Cristobal Tapia de Veer and his daxophone, a strange instrument developed in the 80s, mainly used in the avant-garde and experimental scene, so it definitely gives the movie an otherworldly feel. That flashing title, by the way, initially failed the Harding test, meaning it was at risk of triggering seizures for people with photosensitive epilepsy, so it had to be reworked. And if you're a child of the 90s like me, that immediately reminded you of Pokemon. A couple of cops interview Rose for her witness testimony. One of them flippantly refers to Laura as a head case, a running motif in the movie where mental illness is disregarded or written off with dismissive language. The other cop is Joel, someone we later find out Rose used to date. She drives home as her world is flipped turned upside down. Love the camera work in this movie. Back home, she solves her problems like any upper middle class adult should. A glass of white wine. It's just hard to enjoy with that lady staring at her in the dark with that creepy smile. Yeah, Laura is there in her kitchen, staring and smiling. Until Rose's fiancé Trevor turns the light on and Laura is gone, though Rose is startled and shatters her wine glass. Next, Rose and Trevor are off to dinner with Rose's sister Holly and her husband. Holly reminds Rose that her nephew's birthday is coming up Saturday. How could she forget? And she touches on a sore subject. Why won't Rose sell their childhood home? The place is a teardown and she's been holding on to it for no reason. The next day, Joel stops at the hospital to check in on her. Looks like someone has a case of the I'm still in love with my engaged exes, but Rose is having none of that. What she is having is another smile sighting, this one of a woman outside, too far away to make out who it is. Unless you listen to the director's commentary, then you find out it's Rose's mom. After that, she takes a stroll down the hall, and oh my God, that's creepy. Her patient Carl is sitting in that room with that increasingly familiar smile, and then a familiar refrain, this time with a more threatening tone.
She's gonna die. I'm gonna die. Everybody die. You're going to die. You're going to die.
She calls a 5150, meaning the patient needs to be forcibly restrained. Only when orderlies flood the room, Carl is just lying there, no threat at all. Clearly Rose was traumatized by the patient who brutally took her own life in front of her. Now her mind is playing tricks on her. Time for a hospital-mandated vacation, but she'll be back in a week, assuming she's still alive in a week. Next order of business, tomorrow is her nephew's birthday party, so she stops at the hobby shop to pick up an electric model train. Apparently he's really into them. I bet he's a real popular kid, though I'm one to talk. My hobby at that age was lurking on IMDb message boards. That night, the floor drinks more wine after Rose breaks another glass. What startled her this time? The alarm went off. She doesn't even remember setting it. She turns it off, and the sound of wind. The back of the house is open. The alarm company calls. Are you alone in the house, ma'am? Yes. Are you sure? Huh? Are you sure you haven't let someone inside, Rose? Look behind you. She slowly turns around, and nothing. None of that actually happened. The alarm company never called. In fact, the phone isn't even in her hand right now. It was another break with reality. Back in reality, the alarm company calls for real. The police come, check the place out, and find nothing. And that's part of what makes the movie so terrifying. The idea of dealing with this evil with no way to convince anyone it's real, especially frustrating for someone like Rose, who deals in mental health, and of all people, knows how it'll sound if she tells anyone what's really going on. It also makes such a compelling scenario. How does someone as grounded and logical as her deal with an unambiguously supernatural horror? Trevor comes home to see the cops, another shattered glass, a mess of a fiancé, and a missing cat.
Can you see if you could find Mustache? I haven't seen him anywhere at all.
That night, Rose wakes from a nightmare of her mother. No way she'll be able to get back to sleep, so might as well do some investigating, starting with where it all began, with Laura. She listens to the recording of her breakdown before her death, and hears something strange. A quiet voice whispering her name, Rose. Whose voice is it? Her mom. She listens a few more times, and soon the whisper is gone. In its place, a scream. The smiling entity wearing her mother's face yells, Rose! And in a blink, she's gone. The perfect jump scare. The whispering makes sure you're focused and listening intently, so when the shout happens, it's a major disruption. The kind that makes you jump. The frightened Rose grabs a knife, and that's how Trevor finds her, apparently terrified of nothing. Things are unraveling, and she isn't ready to admit it's the work of something supernatural. Instead, she pays her therapist, Dr. Northcott, a visit to request a prescription for some antipsychotics, but the doctor disagrees with her self-diagnosis. No, pills are not the answer. Instead, she has to talk about the reawakened trauma linked to her mother's death, her mother who took her own life. But that'll have to come later. First, we have to talk about what happens at her nephew's birthday party. Rose hides the bags under her eyes with makeup, puts on a smile, and tries her best to enjoy some normalcy. Except when the kid opens her present, he doesn't find the model train. No, he finds Mustache, Rose's dead cat, which is a worse gift than the model train, I guess. Yeah, no, it's definitely worse. While everyone freaks out, Rose sees the smiling thing again, wearing Laura's face. Mocking her, Rose falls back onto the glass table. To be honest, this is when the movie starts to border on unfair to me, because if this entity can kill Rose's cat, or maybe it made her do it and forget, then package it up in a birthday box, it kind of feels like there are no rules. This thing can do anything. On the surface, that's a problem because it means the situation is hopeless, and we're just watching a good person get tortured for a couple of hours. In a sense, I think a good horror movie tricks you into thinking there's a chance. That's where the tension that keeps you watching comes from. The suspense of will they make it or not, as opposed to they obviously won't make it. The randomness when a horror movie just does whatever it wants can also disconnect me because it creates doubt. Like, how much has the filmmaker thought this all through? I start to wonder if I can trust the ride they're taking me on, or if they're just making it up as they go along. This movie isn't there yet, but it straddles the line. Back home, Rose tries telling Trevor the truth she herself has finally accepted. She's being haunted by an entity. Obviously, he doesn't believe her. This scene is a great showcase of Sosie Bacon's acting. The balance of being angry Trevor doesn't believe her, while not wanting to scare him off, so she's constantly apologizing. On top of all that, she's exhausted and terrified.
No, listen to me. Sorry.
That night, he sleeps on the couch, so she's left upstairs alone to do her research. Laura's life unraveled after witnessing her professor and his own with a hammer. Whatever this thing is must have cursed the professor, then transferred to Laura before it came for Rose. This is the requisite Google scene every horror movie has to have now. I assume those will soon be replaced with ChatGPT scenes, or we'll all finally realize how technology ruins horror movies like it ruins everything else, and we'll stick to period pieces from now on. Laura's research is interrupted by whispering, something calling her name from the dark, her mother. She calls for help. Then another scream, Rose! Cut to the next day. It's disorienting, so you are just as disoriented as her. Maybe not just as disoriented, but it was a good smash cut, is what I'm saying. Rose pays that professor's widow a visit and quickly sees he was definitely haunted by the same thing. Like her and Laura, it all started when he witnessed a woman brutally take her own life. To continue her walk down this trail, Rose needs to know whose death he saw, but she gets herself kicked out of the house when her questions become too invasive, too frantic, and when she tells this woman, your husband was haunted by an entity. Worth pointing out that one of the smiling faces the professor saw was his brother, who died in an accident 20 years ago. He never got over that. It implies that this thing targets traumatized minds specifically. Maybe it feeds on that, or maybe the negativity creates a vulnerability, making them easier targets for this demonic parasite. Now, Rose is desperate enough to visit her ex, Joel, the cop. He looks up the case, and sure enough, it's one link in a chain. The professor saw a woman die. That was just a few days after that woman also witnessed a bizarre death. The chain goes on. That's enough for Rose to know she's not crazy. This thing is real. She returns home to tell Trevor, but finds him there with Dr. Northcott, because clearly Rose needs help. True, but not this kind of help. She storms out and pays her sister a visit instead. That interaction doesn't go a whole lot better, and surprisingly, showing her sister a bunch of gruesome crime scene photos doesn't help her case. Once Rose gets back to her car, her sister walks out of the house, marching toward her with purpose. She knocks on the car window, and oh my god! Hard to describe what I just saw. Thankfully, this movie has an audio description track available for the blind or visually impaired. Here's how they describe it. Holly leaves the house. She strides down the dirt path from her home to Rose's parked car. Holly's head drops upside down outside the window. She smiles wickedly at Rose. Now, no one stands outside Rose's car as she slams her hands on the steering wheel. Accurate. That night, Rose manically eats a burger outside a diner. The actress apparently ate nothing all day to prep for this scene. She gets a call from Joel. After she left, he kept digging, finding 20 cases involving 19 suicide victims. Wait, 19? It seems one man was able to escape his fate. He witnessed a death, then a few days later, instead of killing himself in front of a witness, he killed someone else. And like always, the curse passed on to that witness. Joel and Rose head out to visit that man in holding. Along the way, she tells Joel about everything she's been dealing with, and he's the first one to believe her, though it still takes him a second.
I'm gonna need you to say something.
I will. Just...
The man in holding has no answers about what this thing is, but he did research it. He found other chains in the past. A few years ago in Brazil, a man escaped the chain by killing his neighbor and passing the curse to his neighbor's wife. That is the only way to escape. Kill with a witness present and make it a messy kill. This thing needs trauma to spread. That's what gives it power. Back home, Rose ignores a call from Dr. Northcott and a text from Trevor. Wait, pause! Look at his contact photo. He's got a big smile. That's a change from earlier in the movie when it used to have a more neutral look. Soon, Northcott is at her door. They sit down for a talk when Rose's phone rings. It's Northcott on the line. Wait, so who's the woman sitting in front of her right now? The one wearing a big smile, speaking with a demonic voice. Almost time, Rose. The smiling doctor grabs her and drools like a xenomorph, which was a little too much for me. Rose decides, time to stop this curse. So she returns to the hospital and murders Carl in front of her boss, Dr. Desai, who proceeds to rip his own face off. Psych! She did drive to the hospital, but never actually left her car. I'm generally not a fan of showing something shocking, only to reveal it was nothing more than a character's imagination. It feels like a cheat, a way to shock without earning it or dealing with the fallout. But that's okay, because Rose has a better idea. This thing needs her to kill or die with a witness so it can feed on trauma. So she'll starve it. She'll go somewhere isolated, her long-abandoned childhood home, a place with no witnesses. There we see the rest of that flashback. Her mother on the bed, dying but not dead, still begging for help. She made a mistake. She asks her daughter to get the phone and call for help, but Rose didn't do that, and her mother died. She did not intend on taking her own life, and maybe Rose could have stopped it, but she was just a kid, and she was scared. Thematically, I can't think of a better place to stage this final battle, but speaking for myself, if I were taking on a demon that feeds on trauma, I'd probably stay pretty far from the place where I experienced my most traumatic incident. The sun goes down, and as expected, the monster appears, once again wearing her mother's skin. Soon it becomes a large, twisted version of her, accomplished in part by using forced perspective. They built a smaller hallway so she looked bigger by comparison. But first, a rare opportunity. Rose is literally speaking to the monster now, and she asks why it's doing this to her. The answer? because your mind is so inviting. Another indication that not only does the curse traumatize its victims, but it specifically targets people who already have a degree of trauma. That's what makes their mind so inviting. Rose's monster mom grabs her by the throat. "You can't escape your mind, Rose." Rose spits back at her. "It's my mind. You can't escape it either." She pulls her hands away, hits her with the lantern, and walks out of the house as it burns down behind her. She goes back to Joel, and all's well that ends well, except another trick. One that feels as unfair to me as the cat incident. None of this was real. And how are you supposed to have stakes in a story when at any point a character can do something before you pull the rug out and say, "Actually, that didn't happen"? Yeah, this is all in her mind. Actually, she's still at her childhood home with Smiley, but at least before the hallucination ends, some emotional catharsis. She tells Joel how she always kept people at a distance because she was afraid of people getting too close, afraid of letting down her walls and seeing what's really inside her. That's what she felt happening with Joel, and that's why she ended things. But yeah, none of that actually happened. Really, she's at the house, and her plan is about to fail because Joel was worried about her. He went after her, and now he's here at the house. Now Smiley has its witness. And finally, Rose sees what Laura saw and all the others saw right before they died. I'll describe it as best I can. It looks like if you ripped someone's face off, then tore the jaws off a few other people and hung them off the inside-out face so it has about 5 smiles, it pries Rose's mouth wide open and crawls inside her. Joel runs into the cabin to see her smiling, while she lights herself on fire, ending her life while passing the curse on to him. And that's where the story ends, until 2024's Smile 2, which I'll be covering very soon, probably tomorrow. What else is there to say about the original? In terms of the creature's true face, I don't love it or hate it. To be honest, it feels a little uncreative. Like its thing is smiling, so what if it has a bunch of smiles? And instead of a uniquely designed creature of some kind, it's really more of an inside-out human face. It's like my brain interprets it as less of an entity or creature, and more just someone looking at a person's face and thinking, how can I make this look disgusting? But it's not really about the creature. The image this movie hangs its hat on is the smiles. And more than the design itself, what I did find effective is the means by which it takes Rose over. It was surprisingly physical, literally prying her mouth open and crawling into it. Obviously impossible, but the movie includes enough detail, down to some tearing on the skin around her mouth as it's pulled apart, that it doesn't look goofy. Instead, it is appropriately unsettling. In the end, Smile is scary thanks to its unique rendition of evil through its dead-eyed smiles. The story itself isn't all that unique. At various points, it reminded me of It Follows, The Ring, or Final Destination, but Finn's strong direction and the performances help to elevate it. How do things go in Smile 2? Subscribe and stay tuned to find out.